Part 11. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 101. The next morning, Li Qing took Zhang Qiandan, Zhang Dongxiu and several younger brothers who knew Korean to fly to South Korea. Li Qing sat in the car heading to the hospital. He thought that helping Ding Qing get rid of Li Zongju would change his fate. Unexpectedly, the wheel of history still follows the established trajectory and cannot be stopped. The group arrived at the hospital where Ding Qing was at the fastest speed. Brother Ding's ward is in 302, Zhang Qiandan had obviously inquired. Li Qing nodded and walked out of the elevator, with Zhang Dongxiu leading the way. As soon as he got out of the elevator, he heard a burst of Korean chattering. Zhang Dongxiu and Zhang Qiandan listened, their faces immediately turned pale, and they quickly translated for Li Qing. Brother, it's someone from other factions of the Kinmen Group. The Kinmen Group is an alliance organization established by 3 gangs, and Ding Qing is only the leader of one of the factions, the Baida School. To avoid wasting words, I won't write in Korean. Ah, what does your leader's attack have to do with us? Why do you want to blame our leader? The other side's little leader with colorful hair shouted. Bullshit, weren't the people killed by our big brother in the elevator yours? The people on Ding Qing's side were not to be outdone. But in terms of numbers, Ding Qing's side was obviously smaller than the other side. What bullshit are you talking about? My big brother came to see Ding Qing with good intentions, but you wronged him like this. Believe it or not, I will go in and chop Ding Qing right now, the yellow-haired man said arrogantly. After listening to Zhang Dongxiu's translation, Li Qing walked forward without saying a word. The footsteps of the group attracted the attention of both sides. Ding Qing's side looked at Zhang Qiandan coming behind Li Qing, and his face was full of joy. The other side still looked at Li Qing with an expression that deserved a beating. Li Qing walked in front of him and looked down with disdain. Seeing the disdainful expression on Li Qing's face, the other party took out a switchblade from his trouser pocket, A11. Before he finished speaking, he was kicked 3 meters away by Li Qing, and his body stopped when it hit the guardrail. Break their legs for me. Li Qing gave orders with a gloomy face. The younger brothers behind him, whether Li Qing's or Ding Qing's, began to beat the other party. Li Qing's younger brothers were well trained and resolved the battle in just a few minutes. Looking at the wailing opponent, the little leader of Ding Qing's faction stood up and bowed deeply to Li Qing, saying in Chinese, Brother Li Qing, I'm sorry to make you laugh. I really made you laugh. Li Qing glared at him with dissatisfaction. The last time Ding Qing received him, this little leader had always been the driver, so he was familiar with him. They all came to the door and played with words. I don't know how Ding Qing educated his younger brothers. They are all bloodless. The little leader lowered his head and gritted his teeth. Brother Li Qing, this time it's not just one faction that's targeting us, it's the Kinmen Group's Zehu faction and DRI faction that are targeting us at the same time. We dare not intensify the conflict. Li Qing frowned when he heard the voice. Things didn't seem as simple as he imagined. He didn't delay and pushed the door open directly. But the sound in the room made him stop again. Ding Qing, how can you still lead the Baida sect in your current state? It's better to let Li Zikan manage it. Zhang Xiaoji, the leader of the DRI faction, said sarcastically. 11, son. I will kill you. Ding Qing's tone was intermittent, and it was obvious that he was slightly injured. Haha, how can you kill me like this? Zhang Xiaoji looked at Ding Qing with contempt and said sarcastically. Use your mouth. Ding Qing took off the oxygen mask with difficulty and smiled reluctantly. Son. He tried his best to spit the thick phlegm with blood foam at Zhang Xiaoji. Before Zhang Xiaoji could react, thick phlegm was spat on his suit. A11, you are looking for death. He was about to hit Ding Qing. Ding Qing just smiled contemptuously, not caring about the punch. Li Qing's face was livid, and he glanced at Zhang Dongxiu. Zhang Dongxiu understood and rushed over, punching Zhang Xiaoji in the face. This time he didn't hold back. Zhang Xiaoji's jawbone was directly fractured, and his head hit the wall heavily. Wow! Ding Qing saw the scene and laughed hard. Li Qing said to the younger brother behind him, hit until I say stop. Zhang Dongxiu and Zhang Qiandan nodded, dragged Zhang Xiaoji into the bathroom and closed the door, screaming non-stop. Looking at Ding Qing on the bed, the oxygen mask was tilted to the side, and his body was wrapped with bandages, pretending to be indifferent. Brother, you're here? I thought I'd never see you again. Old Ding, how did you get into this state? Li Qing asked with a frown, a trace of anger flashing in his eyes. Your attitude is so cold. Are you too serious to a buddy you haven't seen for a long time? Ding Qing panted and spoke intermittently. Li Qing picked up the oxygen mask and gently buckled it around Ding Qing's mouth and nose. Don't talk anymore. Have a good rest. I'll go find Li Zikan. Li Qing gently patted Ding Qing's hand. At this time, Li Zikan walked in. Li Qing kicked Li Zikan in the chest and abdomen without saying a word. Li Zikan didn't dare to dodge. His stomach cramped and he vomited some gastric juice. Li Qing, Ding Qing heard the noise and barely spoke. Li Qing heard the voice and came to Ding Qing. It's okay, I just want to teach him a lesson. His boss is like this, but he still lets other factions in. What's he doing? Li Zikan covered his abdomen, came to Ding Qing and knelt on the ground, without saying a word. Ding Qing took off the oxygen mask, looked at Li Qing and said, show your expression, brother. We are the famous Stanley twins. His expression seemed to be recalling the time in Stanley. As for the Stanley twins, he was completely self-proclaimed. Li Qing's face rarely showed reluctance. Ah, Ziba, don't be like this. I ask you a favor. Zikan is entrusted to you. I hope he is alive. Li Qing picked up the oxygen mask in his hand and imitated Ding Qing's tone. Bastard, don't talk. Ding Qing smiled and raised his hand with all his strength. Li Qing leaned to his mouth. In the drawer of my office, give Zikan a chance. Ding Qing tried his best to open his eyes and breathe hard. Then he said with difficulty, ah, Siba, damn it, we are Stanley twins. The alarm sounded in the heart monitor. At this time, Li Qing closed his eyes tightly, trying his best to suppress his anger that was about to burst out. Call a doctor. Li Zikan, who was kneeling on the ground, was already crying and ran out to call a doctor. The doctor and the nurse came in hurriedly, worked for a while, and then shook their heads regretfully. Taking a deep breath, Li Qing stood up, and the veins on his cheeks bulged. Kinman group, Li Qing roared in a deep voice, his voice like a demon from hell, which made people shudder. He loosened his collar, took off the tie on his neck, wrapped it around his hands forcefully, and walked towards the bathroom. Zhang Xiaoji had been beaten so hard that he couldn't make a sound. He looked at Li Qing in horror as he came in with the tie. Li Qing tightly tied the tie around his neck. Go down and accompany my brother, bastard. Hands tightened, Zhang Xiaoji struggled with both hands, trying to get rid of the tie, but Li Qing thought that this little strength was like a chicken. Zhang Xiaoji began to roll his eyes and his tongue began to turn outward. At this time, the door of the ward was suddenly knocked open, and a team of police ran in. What are you doing? We are police, let him go. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 102. A Korean police chief took out a gun and pointed it at the three people. A large number of police officers followed behind him and rushed in to guard. If you point a gun at my head again, I will blow you up. Li Qing had a blank expression on his face, but his hands were still not relaxed. The Korean police officers on the opposite side obviously did not understand Chinese, and they spoke Korean one by one. Zhang Qiandan and Zhang Dongzhou stood in front of Li Qing and slowly touched his waist. Li Qing's younger brother, who had been standing outside the room, also put his hands into his arms, surrounding the police. The gunfight was about to break out, and the whole room was quiet with only the sound of Zhang Xiaoji, who was strangled by the throat. Qing, put him down first. Mao Xianmin came to the door of the room at some point. It turned out that Li Qing informed Mao Xianmin that he had arrived in Korea as soon as he got off the plane, and asked her to find someone to investigate the recent situation of the Kinmen group. When Li Qing heard Mao Xianmin's voice, he calmed down immediately and threw Zhang Xiaoji directly to the ground. This bastard can be killed slowly, but he can't kill people in front of the Korean police now. Section Chief Zhang also breathed a sigh of relief. Although he brought some policemen, Li Qing put a lot of pressure on him. After all, foreigners were involved, and he didn't want to make the incident out of control. Immediately, several policemen came forward to help Zhang Xiaoji up and hurried out. "Don't worry, I will go down and let you accompany my brother." Although he didn't understand Chinese, Zhang Xiaoji still subconsciously shrank his neck, and even the police felt a chill coming. Section Chief Zhang signaled several policemen to take Li Qing and others back to the police station, but was blocked by Mao Xianmin. Section Chief Zhang, your behavior today violated Police Decree number 38. A crime that has not been successfully implemented is not a crime. If you want to arrest Mr. Li Qing today, you will be on the Seoul Daily tomorrow. Hearing this, Section Chief Zhang glanced at Mao Xianmin. Of course, he knew who Mao Xianmin was and knew that she had the ability. He glanced at Li Zikin, who was kneeling on the ground inadvertently, and walked away with the police officers in disgrace. After all, everything he did was to control the Kinmen group. If it was exposed, all his efforts for so long would be in vain. After the police left, all the younger brothers knew that their boss had passed away, and they all came forward and cried bitterly. Li Qing walked up to Li Zikin. "Hey, Li Zikin, before your boss died, he entrusted you to me, you make your own decision. Give me the result before my brother is buried." Looking at the man kneeling on the ground in front of him without energy, Li Qing felt that Li Zikin was particularly like himself at the beginning. Same undercover, same boss with ulterior motives, and the boss who also took care of him passed away. He also wanted to see what choice Li Zikin would make. The next day, it was raining. Ding Qing's funeral was held in the funeral home according to custom. Korean funerals originated from China, and the more popular one is 3-day burial. Unlike Chinese customs, Koreans mourn at night. Ding Qing has no wife and children, and Li Zikin is the one who performs the thank you ceremony for his family members. At this time, Li Zikin seemed to have lost his soul and saluted numbly. Li Qing did not sit in the VIP room, but walked out of the room slowly. Zhang Dongzhou held an umbrella for Li Qing and stood outside the door. Looking at the heavy rain in front of him, Li Qing took a deep puff of cigarette, squatted down and slowly put it under the eaves. "Stanley twins." Li Qing muttered softly, and felt that the joints of the bones in his palms were itchy, and he couldn't help but want to kill. The arrival of a row of Mercedes-Benz cars aroused his idea. The people who got off the car were very stylish, and the younger brothers were busy holding umbrellas. "Brother, these people are directors of the Kinmen group." Li Qing looked at these people carefully, and did not see the familiar Zhang Xiaoji in the crowd, which made him very disappointed. "That's right, this old guy is probably still in the hospital?" The people who came were wearing black suits and black ties, usually Koreans who attend funerals wear this way. They passed by Li Qing one by one, not paying attention to Li Qing, thinking he was just an ordinary younger brother. Then he bowed solemnly, and then came to Li Zikin and said comforting words. What Li Qing didn't expect was that this group of people smiled as soon as they went out, and they were talking to each other. Zhang Dongzhou's face was moved when he heard what they said. "What are they talking about?" Li Qing also observed Zhang Dongzhu's unnaturalness. Brother, the leader is the second in command of the Duri faction. He said that it was good that brother Ding Qing died. From now on, the entire Kinmen group will be controlled by the Duri faction. You bastard, Li Qing walked quickly to the morning shed and snatched the chopsticks from the person who was eating. The person eating was stunned and didn't dare to stop him. He walked quickly to the man and inserted his right eye fiercely. The screams resounded throughout the funeral hall. The younger brothers rushed towards Li Qing when they saw it. The younger brother behind Li Qing also rushed up, and the battle lasted for a short time. The opponent was no match for Li Qing's elite younger brother. After all, he was trained by Fen Yuxiu, so he had to be able to fight. A good death? I'll let you die a good death today. In the heavy rain, Li Qing's face was as ferocious as a devil, and he slowly pulled the chopsticks out of the man's eyes. Slowly pierced his temple, and the wailing sound resounded throughout the funeral home, and he struggled fiercely. But in Li Qing's hand, he could not feel any strength. It was not until the man fell to the ground like mud that Li Qing's anger was slightly relieved. Everyone around was stunned, especially when they saw the chopsticks that were still vaguely exposed at the temples of the corpse lying on the ground. They all subconsciously took a half step back and swallowed. Dongzhu, please deal with it. Li Qing twisted his neck and pointed at the corpse on the ground. In front of everyone, Zhang Dongzhu asked other boys to carry the body into the cremation room. When all the directors saw that the second in command of the Duri faction who had been joking with them just now was killed like this, they felt a chill in their chests. Just as he was about to run away, "Stop!" Li Qing yelled at everyone. Although they couldn't understand Chinese, they knew that Li Qing wouldn't let them leave. Because there was a gun on their head. Standing blankly in the rain, a group of people did not dare to move for fear of offending this fierce god. After about 5 minutes, streams of black smoke came out of the chimney in the cremation room. Everyone's calves began to feel weak as they looked at the black smoke. Qian Dan, tell them that if the police find out about this, every one of them will die. Zhang Qiandan, who was holding an umbrella for Li Qing, immediately translated. Everyone nodded hurriedly, fearing that they would be killed and cremated if it was too late. Li Qing waved his hand, and the directors got into the car one by one as if running for their lives, and ran away quickly. As for revenge, I didn't even think about it, I just wanted to get out of here quickly. Ding Qing's younger brothers all looked at Li Qing with respect and bowed deeply to him. Li Qing walked slowly to the funeral shed, sat down and let Zhang Qiandan help him fill a bowl of fried noodles. The person opposite who had just had his chopsticks taken away stood up and held the chopsticks in both hands and handed them to Li Qing. Brother, please. Li Qing looked at the 3 men in dirty clothes and took the chopsticks. Chinese? Where are they from? Brother, too. We are from Yanbian. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 103. Li Qing nodded and took the chopsticks with his hand, not looking down on the 3 people. This touched the hearts of the 3 people. Since the 4 brothers came to Korea, they have always been treated as country bumpkins. Especially since they just defeated the youngest dwarf. The respect that Li Qing showed unintentionally touched the 3 people. Eating fried noodles with big mouthfuls, Li Qing was followed by his younger brothers in black suits holding umbrellas, as if they also knew his big brother's mood and silently guarded him without saying a word. Yanbian F3 also ate noodles in a sluggish manner. They all saw the scene just now. The boss in front of them was a ruthless person. What's your name? Li Qing raised his head and looked at the 3 people who were restrained. Ah. My name is Jin Dazhong, this is Jin Xiaobao, and the other one is Jingguashu. Jin Dazhong smiled innocently, we are all from the same village. Li Qing nodded expressionlessly, pointed at Zhang Dongxiu and said to the three people, you will follow him in the future. The three people were delighted when they heard this. Although they were hired these days, they had not received their commissions yet, and they had been living from hand to mouth. They nodded at the same time, with surprise on their faces that could not be concealed. Li Qing stood up, looked at the heavy rain outside the shed, pushed away the umbrella of his younger brother, and slowly walked to the morning hall. Li Zikan and others saw Li Qing approaching, and hurried forward to bow. All the younger brothers of the Peking University sect looked at this elder brother respectfully. He walked straight to Ding Qing's spirit tablet, took out a cigarette, slowly lit it, and took a deep breath. Then he put the cigarette in the incense burner. Brother, walk slowly. Turning to Li Zikan, he said, Zikan, since your elder brother has entrusted you to me, I will definitely support you. Don't be afraid of anyone. Li Qing looked at Li Zikan with burning eyes. He didn't know that Li Zikan would make such a choice. If he really made a wrong choice, he would have to send him to apologize to Ding Qing. If Ding Qing hadn't been thinking about Li Zikan until his death, he wouldn't have let Li Zikan live until now. Yes, elder brother. Li Zikan's eyes flashed with a touch of emotion, both for Ding Qing and Li Qing. After looking at Li Zikan deeply, Li Qing turned and left. He wanted to see what Ding Qing had left for him in his drawer. Brother, sister-in-law, you have been waiting for you in the car, Zhang Qiandan whispered in Li Qing's ear. As early as the beginning, he asked Mao Xianmin to go back. After all, it was the head of a society who was holding a funeral. If others saw her, it would also affect her. Li Qing opened the car door and got in. Seeing Mao Xianmin, who was already sleepy and confused, he couldn't help but kiss the woman on the forehead. Well, Qing, you're here. Mao Xianmin was awakened by Li Qing and said softly. The fool asked you to go back, why are you still here? Li Qing looked tired and leaned back deeply on the back seat. Mao Xianmin's eyes flashed with a trace of heartache, and she stood up and gently leaned his head on her thigh. She kept massaging his head with both hands. No one expected this, you don't have to blame yourself. From beginning to end, only Mao Xianmin saw Li Qing's inner self-blame. Li Qing blamed himself for not preventing history from happening, especially last time Zhang Qiandan said in advance that there might be something wrong in Korea. He was still tripped by the matter in Hejiang and didn't rush over in the first time. If he had come to Korea in the first time, would the result be different? Let's go to Lao Ding's office. Li Qing sighed deeply and ordered the younger brother who was driving. In the car, Mao Xianmin kept stroking Li Qing's forehead, trying to comfort him in this way. The car was very fast, and it took only more than 10 minutes to reach the Kinmen group. Li Qing came to Ding Qing's office under the guidance of Ding Qing's younger brother. Sitting in the boss chair, looking at the nameplate with the name of Director Ding Qing, Li Qing's face became more and more ugly. Qing, take a look first, Mao Xianmin reminded on the side. Li Qing opened the drawer after hearing this, and there was a letter and a brown paper bag. Picked up the letter and looked at it carefully. The envelope said Li Qing received it. Obviously, this was prepared by Ding Qing a long time ago. After tearing open the seal, Ding Qing's crooked Chinese words appeared, Ah 11, Li Qing, you little brat, I may not be here when you see this letter. Finally I can call you a brat, damn it, I am older than you, but you always pretend to be a big brother. Li Qing slowly read the letter. The words on the letter were not as good as those written by a primary school student, but it can be seen that Ding Qing has tried his best. The letter talked about his past with Li Qing, the hardships after returning to Korea, and the surprise of meeting Li Zikan. It seems that he really regards Li Zikan as a brother, and he did not forget to ask Li Qing to accept Li Zikan in the letter. The letter ended with, there is a gift from me in the bag, Ah 11, we are the famous Stanley twins, damn, I really don't want to leave this world. Let's go, brother. Li Qing looked at the dog-crawling Chinese and smiled. No one could see a glimmer in his eyes under the dim light. Ah, goodbye, Stanley twins, Li Qing said, imitating Ding Qing's tone. This was the first time he acknowledged this title, and perhaps the last time. After a short silence, he opened the brown paper bag and took out the things inside. He couldn't understand the pile of Korean, so he handed it directly to Mao Xianmin next to him. He pulled out the file at the bottom, which was Li Zikin's employment file. This reminded him of when he was under Huang's Heshan, wandering on the edge of life and death. Qing, this is the share transfer form of Kinmen Group. Sign in the blank space and the shares will be yours. Li Qing looked at Ding Qing's handwriting on the other side of the blank space and couldn't help saying, "Damn, it's so ugly." After signing in the blank space, Li Qing sat in a daze for a long time. "Let's go." Li Qing stood up and patted the back of the chair, as if saying goodbye to Ding Qing. On the other side, Li Zikin was guarding Ding Qing's spirit. Looking at Ding Qing's spirit tablet, he couldn't help crying. He knew that everything was done by Zhang Xiaoji and Section Chief Zhang. The purpose was very simple: to control Kinmen Group. What he didn't expect was that the other side was so decisive. Before he could remind him, Ding Qing was attacked. The mobile phone beside him suddenly rang. Li Zikin looked at the incoming call, hesitated for a moment, and finally picked up the phone. He, Zikin, I didn't expect you to be so sad. Shouldn't you be happy? After all, the undercover mission is about to end. The voice of Section Chief Zhang came from the other side. Li Zikin looked around and saw Section Chief Zhang waving at him not far from the house. I heard that your wife is about to give birth. Congratulations. You will get a promotion and have a baby when you go back. Li Zikin's face suddenly turned pale, his lips moved but he couldn't speak, and the blue veins on his neck showed his anger. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 104. Ding Qing's funeral went smoothly in the next 2 days, mainly because Li Qing neatly killed the second-in-command of the Emperor's Son faction, which shocked most people. As the family of the dead second-in-command of the Imperial Japan sect called the police, the South Korean police came to investigate Li Qing's murder, but they withdrew because no evidence could be found. Of course, the whole family of the second-in-command of the Emperor's Son sect also disappeared from this world. From that day on, everyone knew. There is a mysterious boss behind the Kinmen Group's Northern Gate sect. A week passed in a blink of an eye, and the Northern Gate faction temporarily stabilized the situation due to Li Qing's behind-the-scenes efforts, and was not further annexed by the Zehu faction and Emperor's Day faction. Brother Zikin, go to the hospital quickly. Something happened to my sister-in-law. Shiwu hurried into Li Zikin's office. Shiwu is Li Zikin's deputy and has been with Li Zikin for more than 3 years. When Li Zikin heard this, his heart skipped a beat. How is the child? Not out of the operating room yet. Li Zikin rushed to the hospital and saw his wife lying on the hospital bed. The doctor shook his head regretfully at Li Zikin. Due to mental stress and sudden stimulation, he went into shock, and he almost didn't survive. He glanced at his pale wife, turned around and left silently without saying anything. The child was his only salvation, and now that the child was gone, his entire being fell into darkness. At this time, in a dilapidated tavern, the two of them were drinking together. Wow, it's finally almost over. As long as this guy Li Zikin takes over, our mission will be completed. Director Gao clinked glasses with Section Chief Zhang across from him and drank a glass of wine happily. This guy Li Zikin should thank us. Section Chief Zhang remained silent. What worries me is that Li Qing. Director Gao waved his hand. We also have this old guy Zhang Xiaoji as a chess piece. What are you worried about? From Kinmen onwards, we will be the ones commanding by remote control. There was a hint of contentment in his tone. Then he picked up the cup and drank together. This guy Li Zikin has developed very quickly with the support of Li Cheng. Can we control it? Oh, what can he do? He is a fish in the palm of his hand. Do you think Li Cheng will let him go after knowing that he is an undercover agent? Section Chief Zhang took a deep drag on his cigarette and said with a hint of sarcasm. Li Zikin came to the place agreed with Section Chief Zhang in despair. Haha, I'm sorry to call the future vice president of Kinmen Group to such a humble place. Section Chief Zhang smoked a cigarette and said slightly mockingly. Tell me the important point. Li Zikin squatted down, a little impatient. Haha, with a new backstage, talking will be different. You have to remember, you are a policeman. Li Zikin glanced at Section Chief Zhang and smiled disdainfully. Huh, police. Section Chief Zhang didn't care at all about Li Zikin's ridicule. Hey, give me the Jinmen Group's corporate status, organizational structure and list of key members next week. The most important thing is to give me Li Cheng's information. Li Zikin looked at Section Chief Zhang, who didn't care about his life or death at all, with a hint of murderous intent in his eyes. He stood up and chuckled, planning to leave. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry about the child. I didn't know Zhang Xiaoji would do this, but please consider the overall situation and don't touch him. When Li Zikin heard this, he paused, turned his head slightly to look at Section Chief Zhang, and then walked out of the warehouse. Li Zikin, who walked out of the warehouse, looked back, the look on his face becoming more and more determined. An hour later, Li Cheng looked at Li Zikin kneeling in front of him. Brother Cheng, I was wrong. Get up and talk. Li Zikin stood up after hearing this, his expression a little solemn. He didn't know what would happen if he told the truth, but he had no choice. Brother Cheng, I'm an undercover agent. Li Cheng raised his eyebrows, and Zhang Dongzhou and Zhang Qiandan behind him took out their guns at the same time and pointed at Li Zikin. Finally speaking out, Li Cheng let out a sigh of relief, because his tolerance for Li Zikin had reached its limit. If Li Zikin doesn't confess again, he will order him to be killed. After Li Zikin finished speaking, he felt relaxed, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off him. After waving their hands, the two people behind him put down their guns, but still looked at Li Zikin with wary expressions. Li Zikin took out Li Zikin's employment file from the drawer, and Li Cheng threw it in front of him. When Li Zikin saw his employment file, everything became clear. It turned out that his boss Ding Cheng had already known the truth of the matter. Li Zikin stepped forward and picked up the file on the ground, picked up a lighter on the table, and burned it in front of Li Cheng. Since Lao Ding asked me to take you in, I agreed, and now I will officially take you in. Hearing this, Li Zikin knelt down and said, Brother. Looking at the entry that gradually appeared on his head, showing loyalty value 80%, Li Cheng nodded. It seemed that Li Zikin had truly turned dark. Li Cheng touched his head, feeling that he lacked a sense of ceremony when accepting his younger brother. Well, I heard that there is a guy named Data next door and in Liansheng. He memorizes the gang rules very well. I will ask Sister D to come over to him another day. Tell me, what's going on? Li Cheng lit a cigarette. Although he knew, he still wanted to listen to Li Zikin personally. After all, no one knew what happened better than the person involved himself. After hearing what Li Zikin said, it turned out that Ding Cheng's attack in the elevator was not accidental. It was a joint plan by the police and Zhang Xiaoji. After Li Cheng helped Ding Cheng kill Li Zongju, the Zehu faction lost its leader and was gradually suppressed by Ding Cheng's Bai Dada faction. But this was not what the police wanted to see, so they found Zhang Xiaoji, the nominal leader of the DRI faction, to restrict the development of Ding Cheng and the Kinmen Group. This attack was to kill Ding Cheng and let Zhang Xiaoji take over. Li Zikin would also become the vice president of the Kinmen Group. The two would restrain each other and become puppets under the control of the police. Li Cheng pinched his eyebrows after hearing this. Damn, are you playing half-baked infernal affairs here? It seems that all the conspiracies were designed by the top police officers to disintegrate the Kinman group. Qian Dan, you take Jin Dezhong and others to investigate Director Gao's daily route. Dongxiu, you take people to surround the place where Section Chief Zhang and Zicheng meet. Zicheng Li Qing looked at Li Zicheng with emphasis, you make an appointment with Section Chief Zhang tonight. By the way, notify all the directors of the Jinmen group that there will be a meeting the day after tomorrow morning. I want to meet them. Li Qing showed a cruel smile on his face. Since everything has been sorted out, Li Qing does not intend to wait any longer and simply cuts the Gordian knot. This time he wants to kill those involved in the murder of Ding Qing one by one. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 105. The night in Korea comes earlier than in China. In the dimly lit warehouse, Section Chief Zhang was waiting for Li Zichen, and the person who appeared at the door caught his attention. Da-da-da, the sound of leather shoes stepping on the wooden board came from far away. Li Qing walked out slowly from the darkness with his younger brother. The dim light shone on his face, and there was an indescribable murderous aura. Section Chief Zhang looked at the person who came, his pupils shrank rapidly, then he leaned back and suddenly laughed. He knew he was dead. 11, I wouldn't have quit smoking if I had known. Zhang Dongzio translated in Li Qing's ear. Li Qing smiled after hearing it, took out a cigarette from his pocket, and threw it to Section Chief Zhang. Try Chinese cigarettes. Li Qing always smoked the special supply of Good Luck, which was considered the best cigarette in Hong Kong. Section Chief Zhang took the cigarette, and Li Qing signaled his younger brother to light it for him. He took a deep breath and exhaled a long column of smoke. Ah, what a good cigarette. After just a few minutes, Section Chief Zhang threw away his cigarette butt, rolled up his sleeves, and looked at Li Zichen behind Li Qing. Zichen, you are still degenerate. Li Qing looked at Section Chief Zhang with amusement and nodded to Jin Dazhong. Jin Dazhong nodded knowingly, threw down the bag in his hand, and unzipped it. The bag was full of knives. He glanced at Section Chief Zhang, as if he was choosing the right knife for the meat on the chopping board. He took out a dagger, looked at it for a while, and blew a breath on the dagger. Li Qing saw Jin Dazhong's action and glanced at Zhang Qiandan beside him. What the hell is wrong with this? Zhang Qiandan looked up at the ceiling, with an expression that he was not my fellow villager. Chief Zhang saw the short Jin Dazhong, smiled contemptuously, and sighed, the plan is all over. He shamelessly took out a gun from his arms and was about to shoot Li Qing. How could Jin Dazhong, who was already close, do what he wanted? He held up his gun with his left hand and stabbed the dagger in his right hand straight into his lungs. Several bullets hit the roof. Li Qing slowly walked in front of him, squatted down and looked at Chief Zhang, who was holding his wound and gasping for breath. Go down and apologize for my brother. After saying that, he pointed at the fishing line on the fishing rod, strangle him to death. Jin Dazhong smiled cruelly, put on gloves, pulled the fishing line and wrapped it around Chief Jiang's neck. A few minutes later, Chief Jiang's body was thrown into the water. Li Qing glanced at the body floating in the water, and left with his little brother without looking back. Director Gao on the other side had just said goodbye to his subordinates and was taking a car home. In the taxi following closely behind his car, Jin Xiaobao and Jin Qiuashu fiddled with the guns in their hands. The driver watched them install silencers on their pistols and was so scared that he dared not say a word. Hey, uncle, drive the car next to that car. Jin Xiaobao patted the driver's shoulder. The driver trembled all over and nodded quickly, yeah. Even his lips trembled unconsciously. The taxi stopped next to Director Gao's car. Jin Xiaobao and Jin Qiuashu leaned out of the window, covered their heads with their hands and carefully identified the people in the car. The two looked at each other, nodded, and shot at the car neatly. Director Gao and the driver fell in a pool of blood before they could react. Brother, You still have one bullet left. Jin Qiusha reminded Jin Xiaobao in front. Got it, got it. Jin Xiaobao looked at the gun, raised it again and shot Director Gao, who had fallen in the back seat. Hey, Azizi, drive. The taxi crossed the railway plank road and drove away. Brother, it's done, Zhang Qiandan put down the phone and said to Li Qing. Li Qing didn't say anything, just nodded. He knew that Director Gao was dead, and only the directors of other factions in the Kinmen group were left. Dongxiu, how are the younger brothers in the North Gate being reorganized? Li Qing took over Ding Qing's shares in the Kinmen group, and not only other factions had opinions, but even the North Gate had great controversy. The reason was that Li Qing was not Korean, and he had a natural sense of rejection of his leadership. Brother, it's almost done. After all, most of the North Gate are Korean Chinese. Li Qing nodded. Get rid of the disobedient ones and transfer a group of younger brothers from Hong Kong. If they don't know Korean, they can learn it slowly. Also recruit some new younger brothers from South Korea. Don't waste money. After all, they are more familiar with this place than we are. Li Qing wants to build the Kinmen group into a Korean version of New World, but the strength of the current North Gate faction is not enough. The method he uses is still to open the way with money. Neither the Korean police nor the government will reject stupid and rich foreign businessmen. Zhang Qiandan responded. Although the situation in South Korea is complicated, it is much better than when Li Qing took over Hejiang. After all, there is Ding Qing's foundation. Li Qing returned to Mao Xianmin's villa, and Mao Xianmin had already prepared dinner. Just buy it and eat it? There is no need to cook it yourself. Li Qing stepped forward and kissed the woman's hair, and said softly. It's just right that there is nothing to do now. Mao Xianmin hugged Li Qing's waist and looked up at him and said. Well, I'll spend some time with you after this busy period. Li Qing comforted him. By the way, has Chen Qingjun still harassed you? Li Qing suddenly thought of Chen Qingjun. This guy was not honest when he came last time. A trace of unnaturalness flashed across Mao Xianmin's face, which was noticed by Li Qing, who had keen senses. How? Li Qing frowned. This man sends flowers to my house every day, making my parents think that my relationship with him is unusual. Mao Xianmin was also helpless about this matter. This Chen Qingjun was like a dogskin plaster that he couldn't shake off. Li Qing's eyes flashed with murderous intent. He really thought he was the eldest grandson of a Korean chaebol, so I didn't dare to kill him. Don't be impulsive, take your time. Mao Xianmin stroked Li Qing's heaving chest. Don't worry, I'm calm, I will slowly kill him. Li Qing's eyes flashed. The only one who could defeat the chaebol in Korea was the chaebol himself. He has inserted a nail into Shenyang since last time. Now is not the time. He has to wait until the nail is inserted into his heart to determine the outcome in one fell swoop. What Li Qing wants is to swallow the entire Shenyang one bite at a time until he becomes Korea's new chaebol. Come on, let's eat. Mao Xianmin looked at Li Qing worriedly. She was not a flower vase and knew what her man was thinking. Because of this, she was worried that it would not be so easy to get rid of South Korea's chaebols, as the implications were too great. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 106. Early morning, hospital. Li Zikan, who had been waiting downstairs in the hospital, saw a black Mercedes-Benz approaching from a distance. The car stopped precisely at the door, and Li Zikan quickly opened the door. Zikan, you're here early. It was Li Qing who got out of the car. Brother Qing, I just arrived too. Li Qing smiled and said nothing. His purpose of coming to the hospital today was very simple, to get rid of the last stumbling block, Zhang Xiaoji, the Emperor of Japan. It is said that Zhang Xiaoji has not been able to get out of bed since he was beaten by the two brothers Zhang Dongzhou and Zhang Qiandan last time. But the small movements continued, and the remote control of the directors of the Emperor of Japan caused a lot of small troubles to Li Qing. Especially in the transfer of Ding Qing's shares. If Mao Xianmin had not helped Li Qing hire a special financial director, the assets would have shrunk by at least half. The corridor on the 18th floor of the hospital was particularly quiet, with only some younger brothers standing together in groups of 3 or 2 smoking. Zhang Xiaoji had booked the entire floor, and there were younger brothers guarding each exit. Li Qing and others took the elevator directly to the 17th floor, and then entered the 18th floor through the security passage. The elevator must not be taken, there are younger brothers guarding it next to it, and if there are not enough people going up, they will be surrounded. Li Qing and others installed silencers on their pistols while walking. "Brother, we have been bullied by the Bida men recently." "The president doesn't care," the younger brother took a deep puff of smoke and said to the little leader next to him. The little leader tilted his head and glanced at Zhang Xiaoji's ward. "Do you know how the president was injured?" His voice was very low for fear that others would hear it. Hearing this, the younger brother's eyes lit up and nodded like pounding garlic, obviously very interested in this gossip. "Being beaten by Ding Qing's brothers." The younger brother opened his eyes wide. In his mind, Zhang Xiaoji was an unattainable big boss, and someone dared to beat him. "Do you think if I kill the person who beat the president, will I be promoted?" The little leader was also a little excited, and was imagining the scene of himself being promoted. "Hey, what's that expression on your face?" The little leader saw the little brother looking at him in surprise, behind him. "Biu." The bullet shot into the little leader's back of the head, and a hole was blown in his forehead. The little brother, whose face was sprayed with the little leader's brain, was about to scream. But Zhang Dongzhou, who fired the gun, did not give him a chance and shot him in the middle of his eyebrows. Li Qing stepped over the corpse without even bothering to look at it. With his steps, the little brother on the opposite side fell down like wheat being cut. In fact, the subtle biu sound still attracted the attention of many people on the opposite side, but Li Qing's elite little brother was faster. Before they pulled out their guns, their heads had been blown up. Not long after, the Imperial Sun faction on the entire floor had been cleared out. As for the remaining doctors and nurses, Li Qing did not make it difficult and asked the little brother to blindfold them and lock them in a ward. The whole floor was filled with a strong smell of blood. Li Qing smoked a cigarette and watched his brothers put the bodies into the body bags that had been prepared long ago. Some of the brothers took out mops and disinfectants to clean the floor. A large amount of disinfectant was poured on the floor, instantly covering up the bloody smell. Even the police spectrometer could not detect anything. Half an hour later, Zhang Dongzhou came to Li Qing. "Brother, everything is done. These dead bodies will be loaded into trucks and sent to the crematorium of the funeral home, disappearing from this world without anyone noticing." The last method was good. Li Qing let Zhang Qiandan directly contract the funeral home. Now even the staff who incinerated the bodies are his own people. Li Qing nodded. "Zikan, let's go in and take a look." Li Zikan quickly opened the door of the ward, bowed slightly respectfully, and let Li Qing go in first. On the bed, Zhang Xiaoji closed his eyes, and the slight movement outside did not wake him up at all. Li Qing looked at him contemptuously and nodded to Zhang Qiandan. Zhang Qiandan went straight forward and stabbed a knife into Zhang Xiaoji's thigh. A miserable cry sounded. "Brother, sit down." Zhang Dongzhou was considerate and took a chair from the side and placed it behind Li Qing. Li Qing slowly sat on the chair, lit a cigarette, took a deep breath, and looked at Zhang Xiaoji who was rolling on the bed. Zhang Xiaoji obviously recognized Li Qing. This devil face often appeared in his nightmares these days. "Let me go, I didn't kill Ding Qing." I'll tell you a secret. Lee Zikin is an undercover agent. Director Gao, Section Chief Zhang and I have already discussed it. They support me to take the position, and Lee Zikin will also become the vice president. Li Qing listened to Zhang Dongzhu's translation and sneered. Lee Zikin had told him about this matter a long time ago. It can only be said that if it weren't for me and Lee Zikin didn't turn evil, this plan would be perfect. Unfortunately, several younger brothers tied up Zhang Xiaoji's hands and feet, while Zhang Qiandan grinned and cut his skin with a knife. Zhang Qiandan and Ding Qing also had a deep relationship, not just in prison. He was in charge of the smuggling business, and they had a lot of daily communication, such as girl group parties. This is one of the 3 strongest friendships. Not long after, Zhang Xiaoji had more than a dozen cuts on his body, the wounds were turned outward, and blood kept flowing. Kill me, I'll tell you, the real murderer. Zhang Xiaoji knew that he had no chance of survival, and now he just wanted to end the pain. After listening to Zhang Dongzhu's translation, Li Qing's eyes were cold. Speak. Who? Chen, Cheng, Jun of Shenyang Group. Li Qing stood up expressionlessly and walked to Zhang Xiaoji, pressing the cigarette butt heavily on his face. Looking for death. If you don't tell the truth, I'll let your 2 illegitimate sons go down to accompany you. Li Qing suspected that Zhang Xiaoji was deliberately diverting the trouble. Really? Chen Chenjun knew that Ding Qing cooperated with you in smuggling and supported us to eliminate Ding Qing. Don't touch my son. Looking at Zhang Xiaoji shouting at the top of his lungs, Li Qing fell into deep thought. Immediately called Yin Xianyu's phone and learned about the situation. He also heard that there were some mid-level transfers in Shenyang's mobile phone business. It turned out that Chen Chenjun had been investigating Li Qing since he suffered a loss at Li Qing's hands last time. Money can really get things done. He already has most of the information. After learning that Li Qing made his fortune with his family's mobile phone, he was so angry that he fired all the people involved. Even after learning that Ding Qing had been cooperating with Li Qing, he found Zhang Xiaoji, who was at odds with Ding Qing in the Kinmen group. Get rid of Ding Qing and destroy Li Qing's smuggling industry. Li Qing thought about it and realized that what Zhang Xiaoji said was very likely true. He then took off his ring from Zhang Xiaoji's finger and put it in his pocket. Throw him down. Cut the grass and wipe it out. His 2 illegitimate children naturally couldn't survive. In fact, Li Qing had arranged for his younger brother to kill the 2 illegitimate children yesterday. Looking at Zhang Xiaoji who had been smashed into mud downstairs. Chen Chenjun, Li Qing said with a sneer. It seems that he has to take the initiative. Chabal. This time Li Qing will let them see that this world is not necessarily playable just by having money. However, now we still have to do our best to take down the Kinmen group. Let's go and completely solve the internal problems of the Kinmen group. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 107. The dazzling sunlight shines into the conference room, just like the indoor atmosphere, which is extremely warm. In recent years, Kinmen Group has been unrest. Chairman Shi Dongshu died in a car accident, Li Zongju of the Tiger sect was killed, and Ding Qing of the Baidamen sect was stabbed to death in an elevator. Now the only real senior executive of the Kinmen Group is Zhang Xiaoji of the Emperor Sun sect. Therefore, the directors present here were divided into 2 factions. The Emperor sect was full of enthusiasm, while the Baidamen sect looked at each other in confusion, not knowing what they were thinking. Haha, this time our Emperor sect should be proud of ourselves. Director Park glanced at the directors of the Baidamen sect opposite and said to Director Yang next to him. Haha, thanks to President Zhang Xiaoji. Director Yang and Director Park smiled understandingly. It's a pity that this guy Li Zikin is the vice president. I would say that this position should go to Director Park. Although Li Zikin has not come yet, These people seem to already know the result. Zhang Xiaoji was injured in the hospital and commanded them remotely. Zhang Xiaoji told them that Li Zikan had already been taken care of. As long as Li Zikan does not object to this matter, others will have no objections. After all, except for the Bidaman sect, everyone else is a vested interest. Haha, it'll be a matter of time. Director Park's eyes flashed, looking confident. Chairman Zhang Xiaoji asked us to preside over this council meeting. We must make things final and not let the North Gate stand up. Director Park lowered his head and whispered to Director Yang. And that Li Qing, we must get rid of him as soon as possible and find a way to get the shares in his hands. Director Yang nodded after hearing this. The director of the North Gate sect opposite looked restless. They all know that Ding Qing's shares have been transferred to Li Qing, and they have also seen Li Qing himself at Ding Qing's funeral. I know this new boss is a ruthless person. But no one knows whether it can withstand the pressure of the Emperor's Son faction. Click. The door of the conference room was opened. A group of boys in black suits walked out and quickly formed two rows. The directors in the conference room looked at the scene in surprise. They had never seen anyone so arrogant on the board of directors. Li Qing walked in with Zhang Qiandan, Zhang Dongxiu, Li Zikan, and others. After looking at all the directors, Li Qing chuckled and walked towards the president's position. Zhang Dongxiu thoughtfully opened the chair for Li Qing. Li Qing sat on the chair, took out Zhang Xiaoji's ring from his arms and threw it on the table. The bloody ring shone with silver-red light, reflecting Director Park's pale face. As a close confidant of Zhang Xiaoji, he certainly knew about this ring. It was given to him by Zhang Xiaoji's late wife and he had never taken it off. What did you do to President Zhang? When the directors heard Director Park's words, they all guessed that something had changed. Come here, drive him out, Director Yang yelled. Save it, we killed all your people when you were bragging, Zhang Dongxiu said, standing behind Li Qing. What's going on with Li Zikan? Director Park stood up and shouted loudly at Li Zikan. Li Qing watched a group of directors of the Emperor's Son sect standing up and mumbling something. He grew up in Xiangjiang. If he could understand English, the Korean birds chirping really made his brain hurt. Facing the younger brother who was standing, he gently raised his hand to signal. The younger brothers all took out pistols equipped with silencers from their arms and shot at the directors of the Emperor's Son faction without saying a word. He didn't put down the gun until he ran out of bullets. The remaining directors, whether they are from the Northern Gate sect or others. Everyone sat in their seats and did not dare to move, they were all frightened by Li Qing's cruelty. Zhang Dongxiu lit a cigarette for Li Qing, waved his hand, and the younger brothers began to work. They moved the bodies to the free area of the conference room, spread a layer of plastic film on the floor, and started the electric saw. Amidst the piercing sound of electric saws, Li Zikan picked up the microphone and said, "We are now electing the new chairman of the Kinmen Group. If you agree, please raise your hands." Listening to the sound of chainsaws cutting flesh, everyone turned pale. They were all top gangsters in Seoul, but it was the first time they had seen such cruelty. Li Zikan stood behind Li Qing and raised his hands high. The other directors raised their hands neatly without any hesitation. I am afraid that when they were students, they were never as active as they are today. There was even a director who shivered and raised his hands to express his strong support. Ahem, this may be because he is relatively close to the place where the body is disposed of. Amidst the harsh sound of chainsaws, Li Qing was elected as the new president of Kinmen Group. Li Qing raised his hand. From now on, Zikan will be the vice president. Do you have any opinions? After listening to Zhang Dongxiu's translation, the directors all shook their heads and expressed no objection. I hope that everyone can cooperate sincerely and work hard to develop and expand Kinmen Group. All the directors, whether sincerely or not, stood up and applauded enthusiastically. In fact, Li Qing wants to merge the Kinmen Group into the New World, but that's not possible now. Even if they don't dare to resist now, they will definitely split in the future. But there is no rush. He has plenty of time. He plans to stay in South Korea temporarily and use the Kinmen Group as a stronghold in the New World. After all, the deadline is approaching, so he has to make more plans. Another thing is to kill Chen Chenjun, the stinking rat, quickly, otherwise this dog thing will definitely get in the way. In the following days, Li Qing began to reorganize the Kinmen Group and cleared out some cockroaches and worms. After counting the assets of the Kinmen Group and learning about the Kinmen Group in detail, Li Qing admired Shi Dongshu, the former chairman of the Kinmen Group. Because he has basically corporatized the Kinmen Group and clearly distinguished the black business from the white business. The current Kinmen Group's black business involves illegal loans, loan sharking, pyramid schemes, and underground entertainment. The white business mainly involves construction, real estate, finance, etc. The assets on both sides, although not as good as the chaebol, are also a huge fortune. In the evening, the virtuous Mao Xianmin once again collapsed in Li Qing's arms. "Why are you so strong recently?" Mao Xianmin looked at the man in front of him with a dazed look. "What do you mean recently?" Always, Li Qing was not satisfied with her answer. Mao Xianmin gently patted Li Qing's mischievous hand. "By the way, tell your father this weekend that I want to visit your house," Li Qing said without question. Mao Xianmin was stunned for a moment, then her face lit up. "You really want to, no?" As if she remembered something, the smile on her face disappeared instantly. She knew that her father wanted her to be a bargaining chip for the family and to marry other chaebols. Her father would not agree to her being with Li Qing. Some things must be faced. Li Qing sneered. He had also collected a lot of information about this cheap father-in-law. It was time to show off his muscles. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 108. At this time, Chen Chenjun of Shenyang Group was sitting in his office, listening to reports from his subordinates. "What? You said that kid has already taken all the shares of Kinmen Group." Chen Chenjun stared at his men in disbelief. He never imagined that as a foreigner, Li Qing could easily take over the entire Kinmen Group. Are all other factions made of paper? You must know that although the Kinmen Group is not even comparable to the slightly larger third-rate chaebols, the resources of the black and white groups are no worse than those of ordinary chaebols. It's just that due to Korean social habits, the Kinmen Group has never been able to get into the eyes of the upper class. Although Chen Chenjun didn't want to admit it, the fact was that Li Qing was better than he thought. "Call Chief Yin Xianyu." Chen Chenjun thought for a while and asked someone to call Yin Xianyu into the office. "You're looking for me." Chen Chenjun is now in charge of the heavy industry sector of Shenyang Group. Compared with other electronics, property, insurance, circulation, and other sectors, the profitability is relatively poor. Looking at the prince in front of him, a trace of disdain flashed in Yin Xianyu's eyes. Apart from being incompetent and furious, this person from Shenyang Group had no ability to succeed at all. "I don't know why such a big chaebol would cultivate such a poor successor, who can't even compare to the toes of his boss Li Qing. He even had the feeling that it's okay for him to have sex with him." "Chief Yin, you are a China expert. There are some things I think it would be better for you to do." At first, Chen Chenjun didn't plan to let Yin Xianyu take over this matter. He was not sure whether Yin Xianyu was still worthy of trust. After more than a year of observation, he determined that Yin Xianyu did not know that he sent people to kill him. Only then did he plan to re-enable Yin Xianyu. Yin Xianyu secretly clenched his fists and endured the humiliation for a year. The opportunity finally came. "Chief Yin, do you know about the Kinmen Group?" When Yin Xianyu heard this, his eyes flashed. Of course he knew about the Golden Gate Group and the new president was his boss. "I've heard of it." Chen Chenjun pondered for a moment and said to Yin Xianyu, Go and contact Li Zikan, the vice chairman of the Kinman Group, and ask him if he has the intention to become the chairman of the Kinman Group. When Yin Xianyu heard this, he paused and said, as far as I know, the Golden Gate Group has just changed its president. You don't have to worry about this kind of thing. You should contact Li Zikan first. Chen Qingjun looked at Yin Xianyu with a gloomy expression. Mainly because when he thought of the charming Mao Xianmin, Chen Qingjun became angry. Without that person, he might have captured Mao Xianmin long ago. With the help of Mao Xianmin's family's power, he wouldn't have to be responsible for this least profitable sunset industry. After waving his hand to drive Yin Xianyu away, Chen Qingjun leaned back on the boss's chair. As long as he took down Mao Xianmin, his voice in the family would be greater. Since his grandfather Chen Yangzhi died in a plane crash, the family business has been divided up. His father, Chen Yangzhi, is in charge of electronics and heavy industry, his uncle, Zhang Dongji, is in charge of the insurance industry, his aunt, Chen Huaying, is in charge of the retail industry, mainly Shenyang department store, and his grandfather's illegitimate son, Chen Yunji, is in charge of a film company. Together they are still a big chaebol, but everyone has their own agendas and has long since fallen apart. Li Qing and Mao Xianmin played so crazy last night that they didn't wake up until 3 o'clock in the morning. Qing, are you sure you want to see my father? Mao Xianmin made her last effort because she was afraid that Li Qing wouldn't be able to bear the grievance. She naturally knows very well what her father is like. For the development of the family, he will do anything without hesitation. Don't worry, I won't do anything to your dad. Li Qing smiled and held the headlight. Not long after, Mao Xianmin's voice calling daddy rang out in the room. As night fell, Mao Xianmin drove Li Qing to Jiangnan district anxiously. Gangnam district is one of the 3 richest areas in Seoul, and many chaebols have properties here. Mao Xianmin drove the car and entered a chic manor-style villa without any obstruction. In Jiangnan district, where land is at a premium, owning this large estate also means that the owner here is no ordinary rich man. Li Qing looked out the car window. There were bodyguards in black suits all around, and there were even a few patrolling with police dogs. Mao Xianmin is used to this. I actually don't want to come back. Every time I come back, it's like going to jail. She stuck out her tongue and said cutely to Li Qing. It's good. At least it's safer, Li Qing said with a smile. In fact, I don't think so. It's better not to have heavy weapons in this situation. If the crows were to fire a few rounds with a rocket launcher, these people wouldn't be able to do anything. But this was South Korea after all. If he really did that, he didn't know what would happen. Anyway, Crow's identity as a terrorist would not escape. Li Qing got out of the car, and Mao Xianmin immediately took him into the villa. When the servants in the villa saw the two of them, they all bowed respectfully and said hello. Is this Li Qing? A lady came over, and Mao Xianmin quickly translated for Li Qing. Apparently Mao Xianmin had already told his family about his visit. Hello, Auntie. This is a gift for you. Li Qing also did his work in advance and knew that he would definitely give some gifts when he came to the door for the first time. Mao Xianmin's mother politely accepted the gift and invited Li Qing into the living room. Sitting on the sofa in the living room was a middle-aged and elderly man in his 50s, with eyes wide open and a calm look. This young man is Li Qing. Li Qing was slightly stunned by the halting Chinese. Hello, uncle, I'm Li Qing. I didn't expect you to speak good Chinese. He glanced at Mao Xianmin and felt that her parents' attitude was a bit strange. They always felt that they were a bit too polite. It was different from the opening of the son-in-law novel in his impression. Shouldn't he pretend to be cool and get slapped in the face? He was so polite that he didn't know whether he should get angry next. I once stayed in China for a while, I haven't said it for many years. Although he stuttered, he made his meaning clear. Mao Xianmin looked at Li Qing in surprise. Obviously, his daughter didn't know about this. Come on, let's eat and talk. The table was full of Chinese dishes, which made Li Qing more cautious. If someone is too attentive without any reason, he is either a traitor or a thief. As the family ate, it was obvious that Mao Xianmin's mother really liked Li Qing. It felt like the mother-in-law liked her son-in-law more and more. Mao Xianmin's father was smiling, not like the president of Seoul Daily at all. After a good meal and a good drink. Li Qing, do you mind going to my study for a cup of tea? Mao Xianmin's father said. Mao Xianmin looked at Li Qing worriedly, and Li Qing's eyes signaled her not to worry. Okay, uncle, I just want to taste your tea. The two of them walked into the study on the second floor, talking and laughing. As soon as the door was closed, the smile on Mao Xianmin's father's face disappeared immediately. Li Qing also rubbed his cheeks. Pretending to smile is indeed a strenuous job, which made his facial muscles almost stiff. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 109. Li Qing, sit down. As expected of an old fox who has been in the business world for a long time, his expression changes very naturally, and his tone is completely different from just now. Chairman Mao, please. Li Qing smiled lightly, he knew that the main course was only served at this time. Everything just now was done for the two women outside. I heard that you are the leader of a triad organization in Hong Kong. Mao Xianmin's father poured a cup of tea and gently placed it in front of Li Qing, looking at him with a bit of playfulness. I think Chairman Mao misunderstood. New World Group is a multinational company with multifaceted development, mainly involving electronics, transportation, security, gambling, and other businesses. We are a legal multinational company with regular operations, not an illegal organization. Li Qing roughly introduced the business scope of New World Group. Chairman Mao was very upset. If it weren't for the materials he got from Hong Kong in his desk drawer, he would have believed it. Ahem, I heard that you recently took down the Kinmen Group. As the boss of Seoul Daily, he can receive any news in Seoul. He had heard about the internal turmoil of Kinmen Group some time ago. I am not talented, but I was elected as the new chairman. Li Qing took a sip of the teacup, and smiled. Chairman Mao didn't want to talk anymore. He might not know the details, but it was not so easy for several directors of Kinmen Group to disappear out of thin air. After a long silence, Chairman Mao sighed, do you think I let Xianmin marry the Chen family for my own sake? Li Qing was stunned when he heard this. Is he going to play the sympathy card when he saw that being tough didn't work? Yes. Huh. This time, Li Qing's reply directly confused Chairman Mao. He thought he had heard it wrong. He looked at Li Qing with resentment, and there was no way to chat that day. Li Qing looked at him with amusement, it's all sour milk, why pretend to be pure? Chairman Mao was stunned. He understood every word Li Qing said, but when they were combined, he didn't understand what it meant. But he could also guess what Li Qing meant. Okay, then I'll tell you the truth. You can marry my daughter, but I don't want her to suffer. Do you understand? Li Qing could fully understand what he meant, you don't have to worry about this. I also know that you don't want to share your property with outsiders. As for Xianmin, I will make arrangements. What he meant was nothing more than that Mao Xianmin had no contribution to the family, so forget about the property. Chairman Mao nodded in appreciation. This young man was very insightful and worthy of being one of the Hong Kong tycoons. Li Qing stood up, straightened his clothes, and pulled the corner of his mouth. Uncle, if there is nothing else, then I will take my leave first. After speaking, he turned and walked towards the door. When he was near the door, He paused, turned his head, and looked at Chairman Mao. By the way, I hope you don't touch the property I gave to Xianmin, otherwise, you bastard living in Cheongdam-dong, I will use it to fill the sea. Li Qing still had a smile on his face, but his tone was scary. Chairman Mao's heart skipped a beat. His wife didn't even know the secret, so why did Li Qing know it? In fact, Li Qing had already checked all the information about the Mao family through the Kinman group. He also knew that his cheap father-in-law would go to dinner with the illegitimate son every Friday under the guise of a meeting. Ignoring Chairman Mao behind him, Li Qing opened the door and walked out. When he came, Li Qing had already thought about it. If Chairman Mao really dared to stop him and Mao Xianmin from being together, he didn't mind hanging the unknown illegitimate son in front of him. Anyway, he had no blood relationship with Mao Xianmin, so he could just kill him. Have you finished talking? Mao Xianmin looked at Li Qing coming down from upstairs, and asked curiously while grabbing Li Qing's hand. Oh, who is this? My sister is so obsessed with him. Although Li Qing didn't understand Korean, a young man of 17 or 18 looked at him and Mao Xianmin teasingly. After hearing this, Mao Xianmin blushed slightly. Ah, Mao Yongzi, you want to die? Qing, this is my brother Mao Yongzi. Mao Xianmin pulled Mao Yongzi's ears and came to Li Qing. Li Qing smiled, and it can be seen that the two have a good relationship. Through Mao Xianmin's translation, the two greeted each other. After all, they didn't speak the same language and didn't know what to say. After staying for a while, Li Qing said goodbye. Mao Xianmin drove the car and glanced at her man. What did my father talk to you about? Her heart was as confused as a cat's claws, fearing that the two would fall out. Li Qing stroked her hair and smiled lightly. Nothing, you have to decide, if you really stay with me, you can't take away any of the Mao family's property. Mao Xianmin shook her head. She never thought about dividing the Mao family's property. Her father regarded the Mao family as more important than anything else. The property belongs to my brother, I won't grab it, Mao Xianmin answered firmly. Li Qing smiled and shook his head. Not all of it belongs to your brother. Wait for a while, I will give you some of the business. Ah! What business, Jinmin Group? Can I do it well? Mao Xianmin was very interested. She had given herself to Li Qing wholeheartedly and wanted to do something for Li Qing. Li Qing looked at Mao Xianmin's cute appearance and couldn't help but lean over and kiss her. Don't make trouble, I'm driving. Li Qing shook his head, his eyes flickering. This part of the business is being prepared. The next day, Jinmin entered the group, the president's office. Haha, Zikan, let me introduce you to my little brother Yin Xianyu. Li Qing stood up and patted Yin Xianyu's arm. Yin Xianyu heard this, and a touch of emotion appeared in his eyes. Hello, I'm Li Zikan. Li Zikan smiled and stretched out his hand to shake hands with Yin Xianyu. Both of them are now Li Qing's subordinates, and they are the kind of people who are 100% loyal. Brother, this time I came mainly because Chen Qinjun wants to take action against you. Li Qing smiled when he heard this, and it coincided with him. He was also looking for trouble with Chen Qinjun. Chen Qinjun's main purpose is to win over Zikan and disintegrate your power from the inside. Li Qing touched his nose silently. There will be more or less differences between Korean Chinese and Korean natives. But these will slowly disappear with time. Xianyu, please introduce Shenyang Group first. Although Li Qing also had information about Shenyang Group in his hand, it was all on the surface. In terms of details, it was definitely not as detailed as what Yin Xianyu knew. Yin Xianyu gave Li Qing and Li Zikan a detailed explanation based on the information he knew. Shenyang Group has 5 major subsidiaries: Shenyang Electronics, Shenyang Heavy Industry, Shenyang Commodities, Shenyang Distribution, and Shenyang Insurance. There are also several branches under the subsidiaries. Then Yin Xianyu also focused on introducing the family members of the Chen family. After listening to Yin Xianyu's introduction, Li Qing thought deeply and took up the photos of the family members to look at them. Let's start with this woman. Li Qing pointed to a photo of a woman and said. Yin Xianyu saw that the woman in the photo was Chen Huaying, who was in charge of Shenyang distribution. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 110. The Office of the Chairman of Kinmen Group. Everyone's eyes were on the boss, Li Qing. This person is a big gambler. Li Qing picked up Chen Huaying's photo and showed it to everyone. Yin Xianyu looked at his boss with slight surprise. Chen Yinghua was impulsive, reckless, and gambling. This seemed to be known only to people who were close to him. He himself only heard about it because he followed Chen Qingjun, and Chen Qingjun cursed all day long. It seems that the big boss still has his own channels. For a moment, Yin Xianyu looked at Li Qing with admiration. Li Qing's position in his mind became even higher. Indeed, Chen Yinghua goes to Hejiang every month to gamble, and even lost money in the casino more than once at the Shenyang Hotel, Shenyang Department Store, and other industries under her charge, Shenyang Circulation. Yin Xianyu nodded and explained to the others. So I decided to use her gambling skills to slowly acquire the equity of her company. Li Qing looked at the photo and smiled. Zhang Dongxiu, Zhang Qiandan, Li Zikan, and others' eyes lit up. As people who were trying to make money, they had seen this kind of thing a lot. If you become too anxious to bet on dogs, your wife and daughter will be mortgaged on the gambling table, not to mention the shares. Some even put their lives on the gambling table. The dealer with evil intentions will remove all the usable organs and throw the body directly into the ditch when the gambler loses money. Of course, Li Qing's casinos are legitimate. If they run out of money, they will just invite people out. After all, credibility is very important. Brother, she is very cautious and generally does not gamble with unfamiliar people. Yin Xianyu touched his chin and said. Li Qing nodded in agreement. After all, he came from the Chabal. No matter how useless he is, he still has a sense of defensiveness. So I decided to use the beauty trap. Everyone was stunned when they heard the big brother's words and didn't react for a while. Li Zikan reacted quickly and clapped his hands fiercely. This is a good idea. Yin Xianyu also nodded. Chen Huaying's husband can be regarded as a door-to-door son-in-law. He listens to her on all matters big and small, and she herself doesn't like men who are submissive. Hearing this, Li Qing frowned and thought for a while. Since this is just the right time to find a handsome man, let's give it a try. He looked at Li Zikan, who quickly said, Brother, you know me. I have a wife, and the other party can find out. Li Qing thought about it and nodded. That's right. Li Zikan breathed a sigh of relief and felt relieved. Brother, I often work under Chen Qingjun, and Chen Huaying knows me, Yin Xianyu said hurriedly when he saw Li Qing looking at him. Yeah, too. Brother, don't look at me. I am sincere to the young lawyer. After Zhang Dongxiu finished speaking, he looked at the ceiling with a look of I am very dedicated. Qian Dan. Li Qing and others looked at Zhang Qiandan in unison. This made him panic, and he didn't want to communicate with his old aunt. But I don't have a wife or a girlfriend, and I'm not afraid of being exposed. Zhang Qiandan thought for a while. Brother, I have a good candidate. Oh? Tell me. Li Qing asked with interest, and the others also looked gossipy. I think the crow is absolutely capable of this task. 8 times in one night is a wasted reputation. Besides, Crow has 8-pack abs and well-developed chest muscles. He promoted Crow hard. I secretly said sorry to Crow in my heart. I am a dead Taoist but not a poor Taoist. I have no choice but to wrong Crow this time. He doesn't know Korean, Li Qing said quietly, blocking Zhang Qiandan's last words. Huh, John Candon was stunned for a moment, he didn't expect this question. Then he shook his teeth and said, Dahu and Urgu can also. They are not as handsome as you. Only then did John Candon realize that sometimes being handsome is a burden. John Candon was helpless and looked at the ceiling helplessly. Okay. Li Qing slapped the table and said, okay, Qian Dan's efforts this time are obvious to all. After it is completed, I will ask Dahu to arrange high-quality Japanese actresses for you. Brother, I want 10, John Candon said sadly and angrily. Everyone else looked at John Candon with sympathy. This job was indeed not easy to do, although it was less stressful. Next, Li Qing ordered Li Zikan to start eliminating some information about John Candon in South Korea, at least nothing could be found on the surface. Fortunately, John Candon has been hiding behind Li Qing, and not many people know him. Yin Xianyu conducted a detailed investigation of Chen Huaying's daily travel route and found that Chen Huaying went to a fixed gym to exercise at around 2 o'clock every afternoon. At 2:30 on Sunday afternoon, John Candon was lifting barbells in the gym. Dongxiu, can you stop staring at me like a thief? John Candon rolled his eyes at Zhang Dongxiu, who was not far away from him. That won't work. The boss said he would keep an eye on you. Zhang Dongxiu held dumbbells and said while exercising. You. Stop talking, here we come. Zhang Dongxiu pointed to the doorway with his eyes. A middle-aged woman wearing fitness clothes walked up from a distance. She was said to be a middle-aged woman, but her figure and face were really well managed. At least the big ones should be big and the small ones should be small, so you can tell that she is a woman. It's just that his face is a bit ugly, with prominent cheekbones, thin eyes, and thin lips. He looks sharp and mean at first glance. Purge the people away. Chen Huaying frowned and looked at Zhang Dongxiu and John Candon, who were working out not far away. I'm sorry, I'll ask them to leave right away, the waiter apologized quickly. In fact, this waiter had been bribed by John Candon a long time ago. John Candon was overjoyed when he heard this. Damn, it's not me who wants to leave this time, it's her who chased me away. Zhang Dongxiu shook his head and put down the dumbbells when he heard this, and walked out the door. When she passed by Chen Huaying, she looked at the big muscles on Zhang Dongxiu's body with disgust and fanned the air in front of her nose. There was a look of disgust on her face, it seemed that she really didn't like Zhang Dongxiu. When she saw John Candon's well-proportioned figure behind her, a look of curiosity flashed in her eyes. Hey, you can continue to exercise here. Chen Huaying looked at John Candon's well-proportioned 8-pack abs and said with a smile. When John Candon heard this, 10,000 grass mud horses ran through his heart. Thank you. Squeezing out 2 words from between his teeth, John Candon continued to lie on the mat and lift the barbell. Chen Huaying started jogging on a treadmill not far from him. She watched John Candon lifting the barbell from the corner of her eyes, with a hint of strangeness in her eyes. Especially when she saw John Candon put the barbell on his waist and abdomen and do ups and downs, she suddenly felt a little moved. This is why she has an independent gym at home and also comes to the gym outside, hunting for beauty. I haven't felt that feeling for a long time. The loser at home is over in a few minutes, leaving people hanging in the air, which is very uncomfortable.